Jesus Christ, I hate. Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubbs the Club, your University of Idaho affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Bryan Marceau, joined this week by Marten, producer. I'm stumbling over my words because I don't want to ruin what I'm not allowed to say.
Snake River Stampede whiskey for you?
Well, no, clearly need some more of that. Marten, how's it going down in Moscow?
It's going good. It's finally getting cold. It's going to be an exciting time this weekend, starting on Friday.
And joining us is everyone's favorite current Vandal. I mean, like, Patty went to school for 2 years in Idaho, so he's always a Vandal. But on this show,
Vandal's
he's
super
always
fan.
Well, I mean, yeah, Marten, we have video evidence of this, don't we? Okay, Marten, that was supposed to be your cue, but whatever.
Oh, Vandals.
Patty, how's it going, dude?
Doing all right. I figure that is going to get played many times today, which I'm preparing myself for. But it's been a long half a week of school, but I'm looking forward to Saturday. It should be fun.
Yeah, dude. Look, the number 11 University of Idaho Vandals host the not number 11 Eastern Washington Eagles this Saturday, 6 p.m. in Moscow. So look, we're going to jump into talking Eastern, and honestly, hey, I was on Eagles Power Hour earlier today. It's going to publish later with Patty. Patty's returning the favor. You guys, regulars to the channel, know Patty's been joining us for a while, in particular for the Power Rankings episode each week. But we don't have, I don't know of a better person to talk to about Eastern football than Patty, because he's been putting on scuba gear for those what people used to call deep dives into Eastern football for quite a while. So hey, we're going to jump into Around the Bar. The show is presented to us by Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey. So here, Patty, I'm going to ask you to give us the Eastern 101 in a moment. I mean, the Eagles sit right now at 2-5, which I think of that as a kind of deceptive 2-5. Eastern, fair to say This 2024 has been a disappointing year for Eastern, especially starting the season off with what felt like at the time big win over Monmouth in week 1. The Eagles rode out a 4-game losing streak after that week 1 win over Monmouth. Then last 2 weeks, they played the 2 Sacramento area teams 2 weeks ago. Eastern beat Sac State 35-28. And then last week in kind of a shootout, Eastern falls to UC Davis 48-38. So when we're talking Eastern football, Patty, I'm going to give you the wheel for the direction you want to go. Look, first thing everyone thinks when they think of Eastern for the last handful of years is scoring a lot of points. Is that the case this year? Anything different?
So, Eastern still is definitely a offense first team. The way they've been going about it has been different than maybe the historical Eastern teams of the mid 2010s that just throw the ball all over the yard. It's a little bit different now. But like you said, this Eastern team a lot of people that pay attention to the Big Sky thought that this is a team with the talent to be a playoff team. A lot of people still feel that way after watching Eastern play. Eastern is 2-5, but has 3 one-possession losses. You can call it 4 if you want to count the Davis game as a one-possession loss, because Eastern left 3 points on the board via missed extra points. They went for 2 twice. They didn't miss 3 straight extra points, luckily. But, Eastern's they're probably the best 2-5 Big Sky team you'll see in a long time. But also, Eastern they just overall have been very disappointing. It's a team clearly has the talent to be a pretty dang good Big Sky team. They clearly have the talent to, at least offensively, to be probably the best offense in the conference. And it's just the results just haven't been there this year. Similar to the last 2 years Eastern has just been losing games, kind of shooting themselves in the foot, losing games that they shouldn't. And then they play a good team and they compete with them, but they just don't have juice to, keep up with it. But when you talk about how the team kind of plays, it really has they're clearly an offense first team, and the defense,
they're scoring 40 points a game in Big Sky play, however,
right,
also giving up 42.
Exactly. So the defense has been just horrible. The defense has some guys on it that are solid players, but Eastern has been giving up explosive play after explosive play. And, if they can limit the explosive plays, Eastern's defense isn't the most god-awful defense you've ever seen in the entire world. The issue is they have just been giving up those explosive plays with missed coverages and missed assignments and stuff. So that's been a big issue with the Eagle defense so far.
So let's hit a couple of facets of Eastern offensively. So, hey, Idaho's a lower scoring team, averaging 22.5 in Big Sky play. Eastern's the opposite end. As I said, they're the number 3 Big Sky scoring team, putting up 40 points a game. First place I want to look at is quarterback. And Patty, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about Kekoa Vesperis. On paper, Vesperis is having a season that I would be pretty damn happy if an Idaho quarterback were playing this way. Vesperis has accounted for 18 touchdowns on the year, 13 through the air, 5 on the ground. He's thrown 1 pick. He's completing 74% of his passes on the season. So that's, your basic tail of the tape. But hey, stylistically, what are Vandal fans going to see when Vesperis drops back?
Right. So, Kekoa, my comparison for Kekoa is like a great value version of Berrier, as in he's nowhere near the level of player that Berrier was. But when you kind of look at the style, it's similar. Kekoa is a guy with a big arm that can throw the ball really hard. He's a guy with a lot of athleticism, and he's slippery, a good runner, but he's more of an elusive runner, not necessarily like, another quarterback in the quarterback room, like a power guy. He has arm talent and he has a cannon, but he's been streaky. He'll have a quarter or two where he looks like, geez, this guy might have the highest ceiling of any quarterback in the Big Sky. And then he has lapses of time where maybe a little bit of pressure gets to him and he just doesn't look very good. He misses wide open receivers. he's a guy that throws like missiles, right? And so if you're trying, sometimes he struggles with the touch passes, which can be important to this Eagle offense at times. But stylistically, Eastern hasn't leaned on the quarterback nearly as much as you might expect from a typical Eastern team looking at this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the other facet of Eastern to talk about. They've passed it in Big Sky play 103 times, rushed it 127 times. So we're Vandals. We can handle a little bit of that basic math here. The Eagles have 5 players on the year with 25 rushes or more, 3 of which happen to be quarterbacks. So the lead running back is Tuna Altahir, 80 carries for 434 yards on the season, 2 touchdowns, 5 yards a carry. I guess something I want you to walk me through here, because look, Idaho matches up very well against the run. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Eastern does have a little bit different type of ground game when you have 3 different quarterbacks and that's not because of injury. In different packages, you're going to see Kekoa Vesperis, Michael Wortham, or Jared Taylor under center. So we know how to talk about quarterback hands it off to the running back. They go around the outside, they go between the tackles. We understand how to talk about that. But what about the Eastern approach, the way Eastern uses its 3 different quarterbacks?
Right. So, they have the passing quarterback is Kekoa Vesperis, but they also use him in the run game a lot, and they've leaned on him in the run game a lot more these last 2 weeks just because he's elusive as heck, and he's good at he's like not a power guy, but for whatever reason, he's really good at picking up 3rd and 1, 3rd and 3, just because he just somehow slips through a tackle and gets there. But then you have Jared Taylor. Vandal fans should remember Jared Taylor from last year. He started the game versus Idaho. He's just a power runner. He's like a younger version of Tommy Malott, where he is just run, 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 run. He doesn't really have like a great arm. He can hit an open receiver, but he does not throw the ball very often. If he does throw the ball, it's rare, and it's typically just a little RPO type of thing. Then you have Michael Wortham, who really hasn't been used at quarterback a lot this year. He's been more of a slot receiver / running back. They really like to use Wortham as a with little swing screens and stuff, get him out in the flat, get the ball in his hands and let him make guys miss. Wortham is probably the most dynamic player in terms of just speed on this Eagle team, which is kind of funny to say as your 3rd string quarterback. But
mercifully, Best doesn't give him the ball that much. 25 carries in 7 games.
Right. And he I think part of it is it's just a little it's kind of predictable when Wortham's out there. Typically, he almost always gets the ball. Typically, he almost always gets it in the flat. And so it hasn't been like super effective actually on offense. But something to note, Mike Wortham is, really, really effective kick returner, which I'm sure we'll hit on in a minute. But, the quarterbacks have – a lot of people are like, oh, this 3-headed quarterback monster. And it's like, well, I think it's a little more predictable than maybe you might expect. When you have 3 different guys that all do 3 different things, the problem is they kind of do one thing. So when they're in the game, hey, if Jared Taylor's in the game, they're going to be running the football most likely with Jared Taylor. So, what Davis did is they just put 8 to 9 guys in the box, and it worked pretty damn well. So I wouldn't be – if I'm a Vandal fan, I'm not terrified of Jared Taylor. He did have like a good half last year, but that also was – the second Jackson Eck came on the field, Jared Taylor was a non-factor last year. So I think the guy you need to be worried about is Kekoa Vesperis through the air, and I think Michael Wortham is a good scat kind of gadget player to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, last thing, talk about Eastern offensively. They've got the leading receiver in Big Sky play, Efton Chisholm III. Is this his 5th year at Eastern? Like, is he a COVID senior?
Yes, he's a COVID. Well, yes, he's a COVID senior, but he didn't redshirt before.
Okay.
So he played as a true freshman, and this is just his 5th year.
Okay. Yeah, he's got in Big Sky play, that's 3 games for him, 4 touchdowns, averaging 114 yards per game. So obviously the go-to threat. Eastern converts about 51-ish% on 3rd down, assuming he's probably a pretty reliable passing target on passing 3rd downs. So we have now there's another side of this to hit. So like obviously subtext for Vandals who are here. If Idaho's averaging 22.5 points per game and Eastern's averaging 40, we understand Idaho being a little bit on the – we understand how if Eastern's going to win this game, they're probably going to have to put up a decent amount of points. And we covered the route for Eastern to do that. Now, got to talk about Eastern defensively because, hey, for a team averaging 40 points in Big Sky play, which is a great number, better than what Idaho averaged in Big Sky play either the previous 2 seasons, Eastern is like Cal Poly bad on the other side of the ball. So can you, Patty, can you get us caught up on if a team's given up 43 points per game, there's not a ton of bright spots to talk about defensively, but specifically, what is happening in Eastern that's allowing them to give up that level of production? So to me, it's astounding. The team scoring 40 points on a game on the year is 2-5.
Right. So it's been just explosive plays have just absolutely killed Eastern. They're actually not the worst team in the world when teams run the ball between the tackles. I mean, they give up a lot of yards on the ground, but typically it's like, hey, a team will run it 10 times, 9 times they get 3 yards or fewer, and then they break a 50-yard run, and all of a sudden it's a 70-yard gain or 70-yard appearance, right?
And hey, as a reference point for that, Patty, just to kind of buttress your point, this is just Big Sky stats only. Eastern's given up 6.5 yards a rush.
Right.
No one just gets gashed 6 yards every time. That's to me that's part of the like number evidence of what your lived experience is. Like Eastern gives up big plays on the ground.
Right. And that's what we saw with like actually Eastern bottled up guys like Eli Gilman and Lan Larison pretty well. Like, 80% of the time. And then that 20% where good defenses give up an 8-yard rush, Eastern's giving up an 80-yard rush. And that's kind of been the killer for Eastern on the secondary side of things. It's like the secondary has talent there. There's definitely talent there. Derek Ganter's on the Jerry Rice Award, safety Jerry Rice Award watch list. Like the talent is there. They run a lot of man coverage and a lot of quarters coverage. And for you that don't really like dig into the scheme and stuff, quarters is a very communication heavy type of defense. It's kind of like a hybrid between man and zone, and it makes it very, very hard if you have a lot of young players that have not played quarters ever in their life, which is what Eastern kind of has right now. It's tough to just all of a sudden pick it up and not have mistakes, and the mistakes have been happening. Eastern gave up a 90-yard touchdown last week, and there wasn't a guy within 20 yards of the dude that caught the ball. Like, it's just they've had breakdowns in coverage. What I have been screaming for is, hey, just dumb the defense down a little bit. Like, that's what they kind of dumbed the defense down versus Sac State, and it was good enough to hold Sac State to, 28 points?
28. It was 35-28 game.
Right, and if Eastern could hold a team to 28 points, usually they can win that game, usually. But they need to slow down the big plays, and they haven't been able to really do that much other than, the Monmouth game and the Sacramento State game.
So we've got the Idaho end to talk about too. Before we get there, Martin, you've got something queued up. I was going to go the opposite way, Martin, but we got to talk about Hughes River Expedition. So if you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, do not look past your backyard. Martin, I saw that. You got both up there. That's a hashtag producing in public. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal owned and operated since 1976 and are ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway, and check out special trips like the one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and fish some of the most remote stretches of river in the country. You just bring your clothes, let HRE handle the rest. So call them now at 406-540-4450 or check them out at hughesriver.com. Simon Miller, the bitches, that's a throwback to a verbal typo I had back in the Zach Kloss era, reading through the ad where I completely on accident said pristine bitches instead of beaches. And kind of like top 5 Portland State, it's just lived with the show ever since. Andy Cow saying bitches, hell yeah. So now the Idaho end of this. So we know these teams together would be a complete team because Idaho has not been able to move the ball, but they have damn well, for the most part, been able to stop teams from moving. I talked about this on the Eagle Power Hour. If you look at the Montana State game, really jacks up Idaho's rushing stats on the season. Talking Big Sky play. Other than the Montana State game, Idaho's giving up 2.14 yards per rush. They've given up 221 rushing yards in three Big Sky games combined, subtracting that Montana State game. So that's the first matchup I want to look at and I want to ask Patty about is Idaho has been great against the run, especially between the tackles. Something you talked about on the Eagle Power Hour is Idaho's been able to do that without really stacking the box. Like you said, like, hey, a 4 to 6 man box. And Idaho's been able to really bottle up everyone who is not Montana State. That dates back to Oregon. So we're looking at Eastern, a team that likes to run more than they pass, and a team that is usually pretty damn committed to trying to get that even-ish type of balance. Tell me your feelings about how Idaho's going to handle Eastern on the ground.
Right. So, I mean, Eastern, like you said, Eastern typically wants to run the ball more than they throw the ball, which is, a little bit kind of a new wrinkle with the Aaron Best era. And they've been pretty successful. I mean, this Eagle offensive line has been one of the better units in the conference. But last week they played UC Davis, and that offensive line probably had their worst game all year. Davis totally shut down Eastern's run game. And in my opinion, I think Idaho's defensive front is better than UC Davis's, which if I'm an Eag, I'm pretty concerned. And the issue with that is Eastern, I mean, they've just been predictable in their run game. And if Idaho's been able to shut down run games with 6-man boxes because they're worried about the pass. I don't know if they're going to be super worried about the pass when Jared Taylor comes in the game. They're just going to stack the box and totally shut down the run, in my opinion. If I'm an Idaho fan, I'm not too worried. I will say Eastern's offensive line is probably the second best offensive line that Idaho has seen in FCS play behind Montana State, which could be important if Idaho is to play those 6-man boxes. With the 6-man box, it's really important that your linebackers stay free. And Eastern's had a huge. They've made a really big commitment to, hey, we need to block the linebackers this year, which is a problem that's been there for Eastern. They've been doing pretty good until last week. So I think it's definitely a matchup to look out for. I lean more towards I don't think Eastern's going to be able to run the ball very effective. Another thing to mention, Eastern, we know Tuna Alta here at running back, but the more effective guy, at least maybe it's more of just an observation than an actual hard number. Malik Dotson has been more the effective in terms of yards per carry running back. It at least what it feels like. Do you have the number there?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like sometimes the average doesn't represent what's actually taken place.
Right.
On the season, I mean, Alta here has more carries by 21. Their yards per rush is nearly identical, 5.4 for Alta here, 5.3 for Dotson. And then Alta here's got 2 touchdowns. Dotson has 3. Kind of interesting, though, with Dotson, this is to buttress your point. His longest rush on the year is 17 yards. Which is kind of impressive for a dude averaging 5.3 to not have that number slammed up by, a couple big runs.
So, yeah, Malik Dotson has been the much more consistent 4 yards a carry back. He's more downhill, and I think he is the style of back that will have more success against an Idaho style of defense. He was in a boot on a scooter last week, and we were told that his injury was not long-term, but he was in a boot on a scooter, and I may or may not have not seen him in pads at practice today, which means he's probably not going to be suited for this game. Most likely he might, who knows, but that is a big loss to the Eagle running game just because his style of running has been the most effective against these 4-man front type defenses. And without a guy like Tuna, you think of Tuna as a downhill runner, but he likes to try to bounce things outside a lot more than he should, which is why we've seen Eastern lean more on the quarterbacks. Eastern only dressed 3 running backs last week, just due to injury and just kind of lack of depth at that position. So I wonder how effective Eastern's going to be actually running the ball with the running backs, because that's when they're able to be less predictable. And if you're only going to dress 3 running backs again, that can be a big issue. And I think Idaho's going to be able to totally smother them.
Yeah, and I want to bring up something you said. There's been just another facet of Idaho defensively. Now, it has waned a teeny bit the last couple of weeks with injuries, but Idaho's been pretty damn good at getting to the quarterback this year. 20 sacks on the season, paced by Keyshawn James Newby with 8 sacks, as well as 7 quarterback hurries and 2 forced fumbles. So that's just to bring up, hey, Newby's been fantastic. And like Andy Cow said in the comment section, he gets called for offsides, and sometimes I'm with you, Andy. I think it's bullshit. I think Newby has fantastic timing, and sometimes his timing is like too good for some of the refs. But Idaho's been able to get to the court. Hey, that's part of how Idaho's been successful on the year, right? They absolutely can bottle up the rush, and then for a lot of the season, they've been effective at getting to quarterbacks on your passing and your third downs. The area on the defensive side of the ball where Idaho has had some issues, and this is for sure buttressed off of injuries to me. I mean, look, the talent in the secondary is not the same as the front 7, front 6, Patty, because Idaho's front 7, front 6 is pretty damn good. Honestly, like Montana State is the only one in the FCS that Idaho has played that I've seen that I'd say is the discussion's worth having, comparing. And Montana State's number 2 in the nation. They deserve to be there. Secondary, though, that's where teams have been able to find some space to operate against Idaho. Hey, we saw Bo Kelly do it for Cal Poly for about, half of that game, 2/3 of that game. We saw Miles Hastings when Idaho played Davis a handful of weeks ago. That was one of the ways Davis was able to move the ball. In particular, when they went to tempo, we saw Abilene Christian for the third quarter of that game. They moved the ball at all against Idaho. It was tempo. It was through the air. Idaho they have injuries to their top 4 cornerbacks. We know Abraham Williams is out, which also means an All-American kick returner out, but that's been constant since like week 3. Andrew Marshall went down early against Cal Poly, did not return. Unclear about what Marshall's status is, but if he's out, that's the number 1 cornerback out and punt returner out. We also know that Corey Thomas Jr. and KJ Trujillo have both missed some time or missed some snaps due to injury. So Idaho's gonna have relative to Idaho, injuries are diminishing the secondary a little bit, and I think that explains partially why some teams can move the ball through the air a little bit against Idaho. Partially that's by design. Idaho does give a little bit of cushion, and in terms of the passing game, there's a little bit of a bend but don't break mentality where they're trying to force teams to convert a lot of short passes and then really button down in the red zone, which on the year Idaho has been pretty damn good at that. But I guess, Patty, if you're an Eagle, which you are based off that flag behind you, you have to be looking at Kiko Vesperis, 13 touchdowns, 1 pick on the year, and the Idaho secondary, as if Eastern's going to beat Idaho, you're going to have to see Vesperis is going to have a game, and Best is going to have to be willing to rely on him.
Exactly. The key here is Coach Best and Coach Chapin, the offensive coordinator at Eastern, have to let Kikoa go and win them this game. They have to give him the opportunities, which has been something that's been frustrating. Eastern will average 2 yards a carry like they did against Davis and still try to run the ball 30 times, and half of those being with quarterbacks, which is just infuriating. But, Eastern has also one thing to note. Eastern is actually pretty dang injured in the receiver room. And this is probably, aside from Efton Chisholm right now, like this unit of receivers has to be the least experienced group of receivers I've seen at Eastern since pre-Bo Baldwin. They have Efton Chisholm, but senior Noland is out. He was out last week with injury. He's missed a couple of games with injury this year. I don't know if he's going to be back or not, but he was not in pads last week, and we'll see if he's back. I think he's a redshirt sophomore, Miles Williams. very talented receiver that had a lot of high expectations coming into the year. He's out. He's been out with injury the last couple of weeks. Don't know if he's back or not. Eastern's very difficult to know what's going on with injuries just because they don't really cover it. But
welcome to every Big Sky school.
Right. So those two guys are out. After Chisholm, the production really drops off in the pass game, which can make it tough for, if teams just key in on Chisholm, all of a sudden the pass game becomes a lot less dynamic for Eastern. I think the only guy on this team that had a reception prior to 2024 in the receiving game last week was Efton Chisholm. So all those guys were JUCO transfers or young guys that haven't seen the field yet or something last week. That could be a big deal, as in Idaho's probably most injured defensive position group is facing probably Eastern's most injured position group, which is advantage Idaho, in my opinion. But yeah, I think Eastern has the talent to go win games through the air. It's just, will they allow Kikoa to throw the ball enough and let them throw it to Efton Chisholm down the field enough to actually let them go win this game?
Yeah, and I mean, with the follow-up question being, I know you're confident about the Eastern O-line. If Idaho's starting to get healthier on the D-line, that's kind of the recipe for Vandals getting to the quarterback like we saw. Idaho's sitting at 5-8 right now, 5-3 right now over 8 weeks. I'd say for the first 6 weeks, Idaho is pretty damn good again to the quarterback. The last two have not been quite the same, but I think a lot of that's injury. So we have a couple items to get to as well. Haven't been, as one might say, servicing the comment section quite at the same level we have. Hey, Tom Kendall brings up 2 points. One, we got to talk Jack Lane and a deep, well-embedded tub source, aka me, on the sideline last week. I saw Jack Lane was in pads. I saw him throwing the ball 20 yards. In his halftime warm-up, to the point that I was wondering, is Lane going to check into that?
Can I jump in for a second? I was also on said sideline.
Yeah,
he had in the pregame wars, he had some good zip on the ball too. Like the touch, everything looked like it's there, but I don't want to speak for Eck, obviously. But we don't know for sure if he's cleared or not.
No, we don't know if he's clear. Idaho doesn't release their 2 deep until Thursdays, and well, I mean, if it's a up or down question about if Lane's going to be in, Idaho's not going to say anything because it's two very different game plans to prep for. Now, to shift and talk about Jack Wagner for a second before we get back to Lane, because until Jack Lane is playing, he's not. And Jack Wagner is the guy Idaho's going to be rolling with, which Jack Wagner made the Jerry Rice Award nominee list. So congrats to Wagner for that. I feel like the second half of the Cal Poly game, Idaho's had a ton of, as we've referenced, lots of injury issues. They're down to their third string running back, Art Williams, against Cal Poly. It sounds like there's a chance that Eli Cummings is back against Eastern, but Nate Thomas will not be back against Eastern. So I want to be fair to the coaching staff with the volume of injuries that we've seen. I think figuring out exactly what to do with this many backups playing is a very real question most staffs are not dealing with on week 8. But I feel that when the coaching staff settled on Wagner not throwing short passes against Cal Poly, which would happen in the second half, the team had figured out this is just how we need to operate with Wagner at quarterback. Idaho offensively has to rely on the big play, specifically hitting play action pass with Wagner much more often as kind of their go-to weapon with Wagner. Eastern's been, Patty, as I understand it, uniquely susceptible to play action for a lot of the season. And what you talked about with giving up big plays, that is kind of the type of defense that an Idaho offense being, under center with Jack Wagner matches up with best. Against Cal Poly, Wagner went 17-23 through 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. It feels like the coaching staff and Wagner are kind of have settled in a little bit more on just what the rhythm of that offense needs to be with Wagner, and not try to throw the kind of short passes or look at multiple progression, trying to go through the progressions quite as far that a guy like Jack Lane is probably comfortable doing. But this is the thing for Eastern. They got pretty much 2 quarterbacks they got to prep against. We know about Wagner, play action, deep passes, try to lean on the run, but we'll see. I mean, look, guys, Idaho just hasn't been a very good offensive team. That's just kind of who they are, passing the ball or running the ball on the season. Idaho's just not, talking Big Sky stats, Idaho's just not been that great. They're the number 7 rushing team in the Big Sky. They're the number 7 passing team in the Big Sky. So, not a catastrophe, but not fantastic. Now, if Jack Lane plays, that completely changes the dynamic of what this Idaho offense is going to be and what they're going to be paying attention to. And maybe if Lane can play, we're going to see more of those longer drives that eat out clock the way we've been used to seeing out of Idaho for the past 2 seasons. But until Lane's there, he's not. So Patty, from the Eastern perspective, your staff is having to prep for either Lane or Wagner. Eck has been on record saying Eastern is a best case scenario return for Lane. It'd be ideal if Lane could not play this game, then Idaho's on bye next week. And then that's a lot of time for him to be healthy for that final stretch run. But hey, we're talking, you're an Eastern fan. What's it like trying to decide how Eastern is going to be prepping based off if it's Lane or Wagner?
Right. So, I mean, it's 2 completely different styles of offense with either quarterback, right? With Wagner, it's run game, play action, pass, which is probably exactly what you would want to run against Eastern's defense. With Lane, it's still run game, but it's a lot more, shorter progressions, get the ball out quick, let your guys make plays in space. If I'm Idaho right now, I think I probably go with Wagner and save Lane. I mean, if he's fully healthy, play Lane. But just stylistically, I think Wagner is, I wouldn't say the perfect quarterback or anything like that, obviously. But, Eastern has, like you said, Eastern has been killed by play action and by play fakes because with the scheme they're running, they love to blitz. And when they blitz, that means the safeties have to come in and kind of fill the responsibility of the running backs or the linebackers, in the run game, which means the second they run play action, our safeties are 5 yards from the line of scrimmage and not where they should be. And the other team's receivers are running right by them. That has happened multiple times this year, and it's been very frustrating. I've got to think that Idaho's OC and Coach Eck are looking at this and licking their chops. Like, it is time to really lean into. It feels like they finally fully found that identity with Wagner at quarterback. Like, they're gonna lean into that. They're gonna run the ball, throw it over the top, and I think it puts a lot of pressure on Eastern's DBs to stay disciplined. What that can lead to is more and more chunk runs. I think a lot of it depends on what approach Eastern comes out in on defense, because we've seen them come out in a more base attack against Sac State, and it worked pretty well. Then they went back to more of an aggressive approach versus Davis, and the big plays happened again. But I don't know. I think Wagner's style is probably the worst matchup for Eastern, just because, they practice against a lot of short passes every day in practice anyways. But, yeah.
So before we get to a couple keys to the game for both sides of the ball, Patty, Marten, can you throw up that seating chart? That was another question Tom Kendall had, or not a question, just a topic he brought up. So listeners, this is worthless for you. But if you're a viewer, Marten's got the Kibby Dome seating chart. It's not 100% sold out, but with game day ticket purchases, this game is going to be damn near a sellout. It's Parents' Weekend. Tapakeg, which typically happens on homecoming, was pushed back to this game due to inclement weather the week of Tapakeg, which was homecoming NAU. So, man, I'm looking at that. There's a lot of gray in that seating chart where people can't buy our tickets. So, hey, if you're going to the game and you need to get your tickets, get them now, or there's not going to be too many left. So the environment should be pretty damn good. I know. So look, some of that's going to be Eastern fans, right? Because Eastern's not that far away. Historically, Eastern fans do come to the Idaho Eastern game. And this is kind of a big game for both teams. On the Idaho end, we've talked about it here. this is a playoff now. If Idaho's going to host and skip the first round, pretty much they got to win out for that to be for sure what's going to happen. Idaho sits at number 11 in the analyst rankings. And like, hey, on Sam Herder's recent bracketology, he had Idaho at 10. That means playing in the first round, hosting. But ideally, I mean, I want no part of a Thanksgiving game, Thanksgiving weekend game as a Vandal. So for Idaho, to me, it's a playoff to run through the rest of this season. On the Eastern end, Aaron Best is in a contract year. So Idaho's playing for a ton. Eastern, look, they've got 5 losses. They'd have to win out to have any prayer of the playoffs whatsoever. Even winning out, that'd happen at 7-5, where they would, if you have 7 wins in a 12-game season, you probably need help to get into the playoffs. So for Eastern, their players are playing for their coach's life. They know that. Aaron Best has been with Eastern for, Patty, what is it, 26, 27 years?
This is his 28th season.
28 years. Aaron Best is Eastern for life. And hey, that isn't meant as a joke or anything, which some Vandals are going to think of it that way. I actually think Aaron Best being at Eastern that long is a cool story. I'm rooting for Aaron Best. I think, honestly, Eastern probably is going to have to turn the page after this season, but it's not over. As Simon Miller says, spoiler is a very dangerous term. I think Eastern has a chance to be a spoiler here, and it's just that contrast and matchup. Idaho can't score. Eastern can't stop anyone. Which of those is going to matter the most? Tom Kendall saying EWO is legit. Yes, they are, which is, as a Vandal fan, that's where you get a little bit anxious. But hey, before we get to pick in the big sky, Patty, give me, just as kind of quick hitters, give me 2 keys to the game. 2 for Idaho, 2 for Eastern.
For Eastern, I think if they can run the ball, running the ball will help them a lot on offense. But I want to see them lean into Kikoa. I think if they lean into Kikoa, Chisholm, and letting those receivers eat, I think that is a big deal for Eastern. Defensively, I think Eastern just has to slow down the running game. I think it's the explosive plays. If Eastern can limit the explosive plays, I think they have a really good shot in this game. But to limit the explosive plays, you can't just get chunked 8 yards of play on the run. So I'll say the explosive plays for Eastern. From the Idaho end, if Idaho can hit those explosive plays, it'll be huge. And defensively, if they can force Eastern to turn the ball over a couple times, which they're going to be looking for that, but also just stuff the run, which I think they will. Those are pretty base things, but if you stop Eastern's ground game, you basically have like 30 guaranteed successful plays sometimes with how it's been called offensively this year. So that's a big deal for Eastern, or for Idaho, excuse me.
Yeah, so for me, it's margin for error on the Idaho end, which is Idaho's played a ton of tight games. How even Cal Poly turned out to be a tight game. And Idaho needs to lean into those big plays from Wagner to give themselves some margin for error, because even if Eastern's losing, this is a team that can score in a hurry. This is a talented team. They're just tough to completely put away. Hey, Idaho, we can use UC Davis as a shared opponent. I feel like Idaho should have beaten Davis. Well, you feel like Eastern should have lost by 3 to Davis. Well, Davis is number 6 team in the nation. If that's your reference point, even though there's an ocean right now between being the number 11th ranked team in the nation and sitting at 2 and 5, that doesn't mean there's a talent ocean between Eastern and Idaho. So I think Idaho offensively needs to buy themselves some margin for error. They have to capitalize when they can. That includes, Patty, sometimes just taking 3, because the Eastern's going to eventually get a couple points on the board. Idaho needs to score however they can. On the defensive side of the ball for Idaho, I think you hit it. It's stuff the run and make Vesperis beat you time and again on 3rd and long. Vesperis hasn't thrown picks, but also, Idaho's been able to get to quarterbacks and force picks this year. Like we saw in the Abilene Christian game, their quarterback hadn't thrown a pick in a long time. Well, he threw a couple against Idaho. So Idaho's got players in the secondary, guys like Tommy McCormick, who make plays tackling. They also make plays on the ball. So even with injured DBs, Idaho's secondary is one of the better secondaries in the Big Sky. On the Eastern end, I mean, one, I think you just have to hope Jack Lane doesn't play, because I feel that Jack Lane playing, for sure, Idaho moves into at least a mid-level Big Sky offense, and an Idaho defense with a number 5 or 6 Big Sky offense. That's a dangerous team. That's something we haven't seen yet. That takes care of that margin for error. So phase 1 for Eastern, even though it feels like Wagner's hit his stride, if I'm an Eagle, I want no part of Jack Lane. I want every part of Jack Wagner. And then on the Eagles end themselves, they got to lean into the pass game. Idaho's been susceptible to tempo, and it's pretty damn hard to do tempo if you're not willing to throw those intermediate passes. I think Eastern, if they're going to be competitive, if Eastern's going to come away with a win, they're going to have to exploit Idaho through the air, because if you're not Montana State, that's the only way teams have been able to do it against the Vandals at all. So we're going to pick this game later. We're about to move to picking the Big Sky. Before we do that, Martin, got to talk about Snake River Stampede Canadian whiskey. One of the best buys in Idaho State liquor stores. Doesn't matter which option you go. You can get the entry-level Snake River Stampede. Honestly, I think that's the best buy in Idaho State liquor stores. $26.95. It's a 3-grain whiskey, 80% corn, 10% rye, 10% malted barley, double barrel finish of ex-bourbon casks, then ex-sherry casks. If you want to celebrate a big win, which Eastern has done twice this year, you can grab your 1915 small batch. That's that same 3-grain whiskey aged an extra 2 years for a little more complexity, a little more full flavor. It's double barrel finishes, ex-bourbon, ex-Canadian rye whiskey. It doesn't matter which option you go with. Get your ass to an Idaho State liquor store. Do not pay those Washington prices, Patty, and grab yourself some Snake River. All right, picking the Big Sky. This is going to be. We got sorry. We
actually hit a button.
Okay, hashtag producing in public. We honestly will be able to come back and talk comment section on Idaho and the Chisco Cup, as Tom Kendall reminds us, and as Simon Miller saying, can't afford to pucker versus EWU. Yeah, I got that feeling, man. I mean, I'm anxious. Honestly, I'm anxious about Idaho here, because this is a huge deal. This is a huge hump to get over for Idaho, where Lane should probably be playing the last 3. The 2 big scary games to me left on Idaho's schedule talent-wise are Eastern and Weber. Got to get through this one first, and it's at home. Both are at home. That's kind of cool. Picking the Big Sky. There's only 3 Big Sky games this week. Half the conference is on bye, so it's a little less to talk about. We can talk about those teams a little bit more, but then give ourselves permission to talk Idaho once we return. So, Martin, this was obviously a tough one for you. As Patty referenced on the Eagle Power Hour, the Big Sky's official Big Sky game of the week. We have number, I think it's 10, depending on your poll. Montana makes the trek to northern Colorado to take on your UNC Bears and their 15 points per game in Big Sky play offense. So we'll just rolling through the whole time. It's going to be Martin, Patty, and then I'll pick. So Martin, Montana, and northern Colorado. I know the direction you want to go, but will you?
Northern Colorado shocked the world and beat Weber State. They'll get win number 2 this weekend. Northern Colorado.
Right. So, I mean, this game, when we recorded Eagles Power Hour earlier, and for whatever reason, we talked about this game like way too long. So I'm not even.
Northern Colorado is really easy to accidentally talk about for a long time.
I don't know if it is. I think you're just a nerd, Bryan.
But no, dude, I think they are.
Really? Okay. Well, I think Montana wins this one big. The one thing that's like semi-interesting is the Grizz have been not good on the ground defensively. And Northern Colorado has been, I mean, that's all they do. But also, we said the same thing about Cal Poly, and Northern Colorado got smoked by Cal Poly. So I think Montana wins this one by a lot.
So I need to issue a correction, Patty, or maybe just a supplement. Montana has not just been poor defensively through the air. They've been poor on the ground. Whatever a team does offensively, Montana's been pretty bad at stopping it. But the Grizz, again, I just think it's hysterical. The Grizz are averaging 43.7 points per game in conference while surrendering 41.3. This is an old school Bo Baldwin team. The Grizz have a ton of offensive weapons. They have none on the defensive side of the ball. Logan Fife has been great at quarterback. They've got 2 running backs, Eli Gilman and Nick Osmo, who the Grizz lean relatively heavily on. Both are averaging in excess of 5 yards a carry. And then in the receiving room, everyone knows who Junior Bergen is, all Big Sky level receiver. But we've had a little emergence in Big Sky play. Keelan White actually leads the Grizz in receptions with 23 for 97 yards per game. So that's all to say, dude, Montana's going to win this easy because Northern Colorado can't score against anyone. You can't score against Cal Poly. You can't score. So yeah, that's all. Grizz are going to win this game. And I think in Northern Colorado, I'm going to blame this. Talking Northern Colorado is easy for me because, as Eric Stang in the comment section can attest to, we spent many years talking Zach Kloss basketball. So we just have an affinity for dissecting garbage, one might say. And I promise.
Speaking Eastern tie-in, let's play this clip again.
Fire Zach Kloss! Fire!
Okay. Thank you, Martin. I said I'd be less flippant this year about talking teams. So no, Montana's going to win. Next game.
Hold on. You forgot to mention Dallas picked Montana. Treve and Jeff also picked Montana.
That's why you're the producer. I can't. I can't go through these things.
Bryan forgot to mention Bryan and Jeff went 4-1 last week. Dallas, myself, and Treve all went 5-0 and won and all get crowns.
Yeah, god damn it. Well, it's because that Weber State special teams kicked my ass. That was the problem. Weber State, however, is on bye, so I don't have to worry about that. We have Sacramento State at Idaho State. Martin.
Sac State.
So this one's like a weirdly interesting matchup.
Tickets as low as $7 on ESPN.
Nice. Everyone in Pokey get down there. But Idaho State, we all know Idaho State, they're a relatively good passing team. The one thing that's kind of interesting about this is Sac State's defensive secondary hasn't been great this year. They've been susceptible. But in my opinion, I think Sac State is a team that's, I think right now, I mean, they're not quite as disappointing as Weber, but like they've just been very disappointing. I think they have the talent to be similar to Eastern. Like they have the talent to be close to a playoff team, but they've just been kind of giving games away and losing to teams that aren't as good as them. But I just think they're a lot more talented than Idaho State. It's kind of interesting because like stylistically, like it's strength on weakness for either team. Like Sac State wants to run the ball. Idaho State can't stop anyone running the ball, and vice versa for Sac State. Like Sac State secondary has been bad. Idaho State likes to throw the ball. I think this is like a high scoring shootout type of game that Sac State ultimately wins in the end.
Yeah, you hit it with its strength on weakness for both teams. By the way, in the comments section, everyone who knows what they're talking about is picking Montana over Northern Colorado. Yes, I'm yanking the subject matter back. Except Tom Kendall picking NoCo. Eric Stang says 15 points versus the Grizz equals 30 points. Okay. And Duffer's Tavern, if NoCo wins, 1 free shot per customer. It ain't happening. Andy Kaus is so over Montana, Northern Colorado that he picked Weber State to win. So I think that's what the barbecue steak comment is. So back to Idaho State and Sac State. Tom Kendall picking Idaho State. Yeah, you hit it. So Idaho State they're a fun team. They have offensive talent. They can move the ball through the air. Their issue is they cannot stop anyone on the ground. And I just think they're going to get a healthy dose of Elijah Tolliver, both on the ground and through the air, where on the ground, Tolliver in Big Sky play, averaging 101.3 yards per game rushing. He's also a threat in the passing game. I just think Idaho State doesn't have yet. They don't have the defense to really hang with teams who can play power football. I mean, Idaho State's given up. They're the number 12 rushing defense in the Big Sky. There you go. They've given up 13 rushing touchdowns in 4 games. So no, I'm going to pick Sacramento State. I think it's just a shitty matchup for Idaho State, but I think this is a fun game to pay attention to. Both teams are solid. Both are teams who can beat. I mean, on any given day, both these teams could lose to anyone or beat anyone who's not Montana State. Now the game that we're all here to talk about. By the way, most people are picking. Tom Kendall picks ISU. Turner Webb picks Ball Sac State, the newest Pac-12 member. Eric Stang saying go Bees. I believe that means Sac State. Andy Kaus picking Idaho State, aka the Bungles. Duffer's Tavern, Ball Sac State. Captain 58. The Gate City Kitties might surprise Sac. The mini dome is crazy, but it feels like Sac with a silent K has figured some stuff out lately. Jason Mayer, Kitties win, Jungle Land goes crazy, burns down Scotty's drive-in. And okay, Idaho and Eastern. Your pick and score, Marten. And Marten, before I go, you can give everyone the picks from Trebe and Dallas because I'm going to forget.
Dallas and Trebe picked Sac State. Jeff picked Idaho State. And with that, I will go quick and just say Idaho 38, Eastern 24.
If Idaho scores 38, Marten, are you saying Jack Lane is playing? 'Cause 38 is...
I'm not going to waffle on that. I'm not answering that question because I'm just going to say Idaho 38, Eastern 24.
Idaho has scored 38 or more one time this year. It was week 3 against Albany. All right, Patty.
They're doing it again.
So I think this game is like if Idaho scores 30 points, I think they win this game. And I think they have the potential to do it with just the big playability that, I mean, Jack Wagner has a cannon. Eastern's defense is susceptible to things. Another, like one thing that you mentioned when it came to keys to the game is you really think like Idaho needs that margin for error. Eastern has been a king at giving teams that margin for error because they just constantly get behind good teams. They went into halftime against Montana. It was like 30 to like 14. They went into halftime of the Davis game 28-9. Like they've been very good at giving away leads early, and I think that is again what might happen. I think Eastern's gonna try to run the ball way more than they should, and I'm not super confident in them being able to run the ball, especially without Malik Dotson in there. I think Idaho wins this game. I think they're going to be able to score 30 points. As an Eastern fan, every game that I have felt confident that Eastern has a chance to win and should win, they have either lost or gotten their asses kicked. Every game that I was confident that Eastern was going to lose or that I thought was going to be a really close game and Eastern might come out on the bad end, like I didn't love the matchup, Eastern has won in Sac State and Monmouth. So, I think Idaho wins this game. Think about I kind of wondering if that weird voodoo magic happens again, but I think Idaho wins the game 32-28. I think they just cause explosive plays and win this one.
So you brought up a point, but by the way, hey, Marten, who did Dallas, Trebe, and Jeff pick? You're muted.
Hey, I did it for the first time in a long time. Let's go. Dallas went 34-21. Trebe went 35-24. Jeff went 38-23. Wow, words are hard, and I did not take my sleeping medication yet. I'm going to stop talking now.
You didn't tell us who they picked.
Oh, they all picked Idaho.
I had a feeling. So, point I want to bring up, Patty just brought this up. So we're, you guys understand the theme here. Idaho's issue has been not scoring the ball enough. Eastern's issue has been they let anyone score whenever they want to. The best defensive outing for Eastern this season was week 1 against Monmouth, giving up 27 points. Otherwise, look, this is a team that lost and gave up 35 to Drake, gave up 52 to Montana, just gave up 48 to UC Davis. So, Marten, maybe you were just being prescient and understanding that Eastern, it is their destiny to let people score 7,000 points. To go hit the comments section, Tom Kendall picks Idaho. Jason Mayer says Idaho 38, Eastern 18, both QBs, meaning Jack Lane and Jack Wagner, play equal snaps. Eric Stang, 24-21, he's picking Idaho. Cap Dan, 58, Idaho, big dub against Eastern. Like embarrassing, like fire your coach bad, returns the favor so EW can move on from Best. Aaron Best will always hold a special place in my heart for what he did to Paul Petrino in 2021. And also a tweet.
You guys liking your dumpster fire tweet?
That's the other one too. Is I tweeted out mid game, that little GIF whatever of a dumpster fire on a dumpster on fire, saying live footage of Paul Petrino's game plan, which Aaron Best then liked later. That's the thing. I like Aaron Best. He's fun. I like when more coaches are fun. But look, everyone's picking Idaho in our section. Andy Cows, 38-17, assuming that means Idaho. We see 3 QBs. Duffer's Tavern, 27-17 Vandals. Tom Kendall, I like our chances with a sold-out dome. Turner Webb, 34-28 Idaho. Captain 58, Vandals 40, Eastern 24. Okay, here's at Idaho Real Estate for Idaho 42, Eastern 17. Okay, here's that 34-28 seems right. Something like that, because Idaho has not, for all that Idaho's done well, they've played a lot of tight games because they also do let teams come back. That's part of why the Vandals have had as many close games as they've had. So I'm going to go Idaho. I'm going to go 35-27. But Idaho's had games wire to wire tight for a lot of this season. But if Lane is the guy who plays the majority, I don't think it's close. I think the matchup is different if Jack Lane's playing the whole way, but until he's out there, he's not. So I'm going to go Idaho 35, Eastern 27. So hey, before we head out, Patty, thanks for joining us. And everyone, hey, if you have not joined the Discord at patreon.com/Tubs at the Club, the hashtag only Tubs Discord is the best place to talk Idaho football online. It's not remotely close. It is a great place when Idaho's winning. It is a nice place to share your panic when Idaho's losing. And even things are rough for Idaho this year, guys. They're 5-3 with losses to Oregon, Montana State, and UC Davis. So it's not that bad. But if you want to be dramatic about an Idaho loss, you can do it in the Discord with other people who'll be dramatic with you. Costs less than a cup of coffee a month to support the show. Although if you want to give us a few more bucks, go ahead and do it. Patty, while you're here, before we head out, anything else you want to say about this game to close it out?
Not a ton. As an Eagle fan, I'm not feeling very optimistic at all, which has led me to, for whatever reason, these games being really tight. When I say 38-28 or 32-28, I think this is like Idaho gets out to a lead, almost like similar to the Cal Poly game. No, not the Cal Poly game. Like Idaho gets out to a lead in the first half, and then Eastern makes it feel closer.
Like the Abilene,
similar
Christian
to
game?
the Cal Poly second half, but over the course of the whole game.
Right. I think that's more what this game is like. I like Eastern has the talent to be really good, but they have really killed themselves with scheme stuff, and I just think the coaching. These two teams, I think talent-wise, aren't that like. I don't think there's a massive ocean between them, but the coaching ocean right now, from what I've seen, is huge. So when that happens, I think it goes to Idaho.
Yeah, I gotta say, I hope the most old school meathead version of Aaron Best is the one who makes that trip to Idaho, because I would love to see Eastern try to run the ball 30 or 40 times. Absolutely love it.
It wouldn't shock me. Yeah.
So hey, we're all going to be there at the game. So hey, you see us in the parking lot, say hi. Dallas is going to be there. I don't know about Trevin. Jeff is probably not going to be here. Andy Cow saying Idaho women's basketball and ICCU Friday night.
I will be there too if you guys want to. I'll kind of say if you see me at the game on Friday night, come say hi. You all know where I talk about and see everybody. So
I've been
I won't scuff my shoes, Nick.
I've been so caught up in football and other stuff that like it's wild to be basketball season is right around the corner. I mean, just today, Juice Mims was preseason All Big Sky on the men's side. Yeah, it's hard as hell to actually make predictions preseason about what the team's actually going to be. But hey, Idaho women's new head coach Arthur Morera. Is that how I say it?
Close enough. I think it's close enough. I'm sure I'll get corrected later on.
Yeah. Okay. It's going to be his debut on Friday. Yeah. So hey, best of luck.
Be fun. I know the season's going to be. I know the new roster's a lot of turnover. But hey, I'll probably soon eventually. I'll probably like Bryan in past years. I'll probably watch a couple games and then make some previews just so others can get to know the team a little more.
Yeah, hey, Andy Cow saying fireworks after the women's basketball game holdover from homecoming. I am going to say I love that the homecoming stuff was pushed off this late because it's just an extra special thing, but it also sucks that it happened in the first place. But anyway, Martin, I'm grabbing up the women's game just to reference it for a little bit. Okay, it's exhibition against Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark State College. Yeah, the men's team. I'm not saying this about Alex Pribble. I'm saying a previous staff was clearly scared to schedule LCSC after a couple losses. So I'm glad the women's side is not scared of that for an exhibition. But anyway, yeah, no, dude, rooting for a women's basketball. We're rooting for Coach Arthur Moriera, who I need to ask him again how to pronounce his name. He told me and I forgot. But anyway, we'll see you all there. We can call this a day now. Oh, Moira. Okay, then that's it. Arthur Moira. My bad. Thank you, Jason Mayer. Arthur Moira. I'll get that down. Guys, we're going to see you there. I'm going to quit repeating the coach's name 1,000 times just to teach myself how to pronounce it. As Patty always says, Martin.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Higgs.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals. Go Vandals.
This is producer Bryan doing a terrible job of even finding what we're going to play us out with. So we're just going to call it good. See you guys Tuesday. Motherfucker.
Go Vandals.